Baby, please just pick up the phone. I know that you're home, I've been so alone. I've been lost in a room and the door been closed. Yo, I hope that it snows so I don't have to go out in the world that'll judge me. Lovely, trust me, I ain't looking for no one to fuck me. Love me, touch me, even though I'm ugly. I'm trying to put you on a pedestal up above me. I look in the mirror.
It's hard to deny the positive effect that cannabis has had on sports in the past and sports today as we know it. Cannabis is a part of sports whether you like it or not.
Often it pays to throw caution away. Man, I'm not gonna say that I'm living my best, cause my head it resides
and
in
you're
the dark
getting
part of space.
high in the middle of the afternoon
Back, I got time today. We gon' fly away from all these problems. Lost in the moment, I don't feel like stopping. Hey, what I'm trying to say, you never know if you're gon' die today, cause you only live your life on this earth one time. I'ma get what's mine, I'ma find a way. Hey, hey. But hey, what I'm trying to say is call me back, I got time today. We gon' fly away from all these problems. Lost in the moment, I don't feel like stopping. Hey, what I'm trying to say, you never know if you're gon' die today, cause you only live your life on this earth one time. I'ma get what's mine, I'ma find a way.
Like a whole lot of weed.
What's going on, everybody? We are live, and I'm your host, as always, Dallas Clark, but I'm also known as Indo is my Nindo. Now, I'd like to thank y'all so much for tuning in to this week's episode of the Huddle Chat Sports Show, episode number 34. We've come a long way. It's been a long time, and we're approaching almost a full year of doing the Huddle Chat Sports Show, and it's been a great time. I cannot thank you guys enough for being here throughout the entire process and continuing forward. Starting off on today, again, like always, we are presented by Ma Energy. Ma Energy, game like a beast with Ma Energy. I will be dropping out the link in the video, the live video, the comments, as well as on the on-demand videos as well. With Ma Energy, you can game like a beast, be a beast, and energize yourself without using all those sugary energy drinks that just leave you crashing at the end of it. Save yourself some money. Get some Ma Energy using my link. That gets you 10% off any purchases you make using the Ma Energy link within that first 30 days. Now, again, I'd like to welcome everybody. As you might have heard there, we're live on Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube, all simultaneously. And I'd like to welcome everybody that is live watching via those platforms, as well as everybody who may be watching on demand on the same platforms or via any clips. I appreciate any support, any love, any watch time that y'all can give me. I'm here doing this for you guys. And if you haven't heard, if you're new to the show, what is the Huddle Chat Sports Show? What do we do here? What's all the smoke about? Here over on THC Sports, we are a cannabis-powered, yet sports-driven talk show. And we like to focus purely on the sports. We like to stay away from politics. We go straight into all those teams, players, and storylines that typically don't get as much attention as they should in the national headlines. If you're anything like me and you watch those daily and weekly sports shows, Undisputed, First Take, Get Up, you name it, you get tired of hearing about the same stories, the same players, the same teams constantly over and over and over again. It gets tiresome. And over here on the Huddle Chat Sports Show, I like to talk about what you want to hear about. So never be afraid to drop a comment, give me some feedback, give me a question. Let me know what you want to hear about. I'm always willing to talk to you guys. I love interacting with my chat. And here on the Huddle Chat Sports Show, we love interacting with our live viewers. Speaking of that, we are up to almost 280 followers. I think we're at 279 at the start of the episode. We're almost at 300, and I cannot thank you guys enough for that. Now, I do want to ask you guys for one more favor. We're on that big push. We're grinding. We're going to that 420 follower mark. And at the 420 follower mark, if you do not see it, let me back up a little bit for you. My THC Sports t-shirt for you. We officially have THC Sports merchandise, and I want you guys all rocking THC Sports, wearing this apparel out in the streets, out in your daily lives. So I really want to get you guys out here. And once we get to that 420 followers mark, I'm going to be doing a huge giveaway, not just one or two t-shirts. I'm going to be giving a huge giveaway, hoodies, t-shirts, headbands, all of that. I just need you guys to help me get to that 420 followers mark. So make sure that you share this out to your friends, get that chat going, and let's get a lot more people. You watch the show, so you get your friends into what you're interested in going to help me get more viewers on the show, and it'll help us all out. We're all going to get that viewership going. We're also going to start we're going to go out and give out jersey giveaways for a certain amount of live viewers here coming up next week as well. I do apologize for the late start and the shorter episode for today. We will be changing the time to the Huddle Chat Sports Show. Just my work schedule and everything is changing a little bit, and we no longer will be able to fit that 7 p.m. window on Tuesday. So make sure you stay tuned on the Huddle Chat Sports Show Facebook and Twitter for more information. Now, enough with all the bullshit, all the entry stuff. Let's get into what today is all about. Today is going to be rolled tight with all sorts of information. We got news coming from the NFL, all the rumors, all the pre-draft moves that are going on. We're kind of deciphering everything, coming down to the NFL draft here in a couple weeks on April 29th. I mean, in the NBA, we're on the last 20-game stretch of the NBA. I want to discuss a couple of different topics that I got brought to me while I was guest hosting over on the Rick T podcast this week. And I kind of want to go in a little bit more depth in those, as well as talk about a team that I think that we all need to start paying a little bit more attention to coming down to the last stretch of the NBA season. It's no secret to anybody that the MLB just kicked off, and we had opening day this last weekend. You would have thought it was an April Fool's joke that the Colorado Rockies themselves were one of the teams that were on live primetime TV on MLB opening day. So we're going to be talking about some of the big MLB rumors and stories coming into. And for those of you that aren't big MLB fans, what are the biggest 5 things to pay attention to this year? And, of course, we got to talk about the UFC. All fight fans, we got treated to the first quarter of the year, some really highly anticipated fights. And we're here to discuss that now that we've passed all those, we've passed those big fights all the way up here through to April 1st. What's coming up next? What are some of the next big fights that we need to look forward to? Discussing some of the ones coming down the pipe and what they mean for certain fighters. But before we get into all of that, all the smoke and everything like that today, you guys already know how we like to do things around here. We like to go with that word on the tweet. What is the word on the tweet today? So actually, I got a couple of different things for y'all today. Word on the tweet. If you do not know, Aaron Rodgers has been guest hosting on Jeopardy, and one of the contestants this week actually thought it would be a pretty awesome idea, and everybody loved it, to troll Aaron Rodgers a little bit on Jeopardy, asking a question. So let's look at and see what that was all about.
Champion on the end. Scott, did you come up with the correct response? Who wanted to kick that field goal? That is a great question. Should be correct, but unfortunately for this game today, that's incorrect.
I mean, you saw the actual pain in Aaron Rodgers' face as he read that question and had to think about his response. If you don't know what that means, that's going straight into that Packers really bad decision in the playoffs that ended up being one of the reasons that they did not end up going further in the playoffs this year, being the Packers that we always know. And it was fun to see Aaron Rodgers taking a little bit of the lighter side on that thing, and it's really awesome to see. But as much as I dislike Aaron Rodgers, it was pretty awesome to see how lightly he took that trolling by that guest who had actually won Jeopardy the first 2 days before having asked that question. Now, the second word on the tweet that I got for you guys today, this one's actually going to be a pretty interesting one. We were watching baseball, and I don't even really got to explain this one to you. Let me just give you this one and let you get it full. Let you get the full experience, guys.
Holly, 50, 60 bucks. Oh, here it comes, right in your living room. Bam. Oh, in your face.
Yeah, 50, 60 bucks. No, I don't.
St. Louis Cardinals slugger today hits a foul ball right into the camera and smashes the camera. Anybody that got to watch that, it made me jump when I first saw it. It seems like it's coming straight into your living room. Let's watch it just one more time.
50, 60 bucks. Oh, here it comes, right in your living room. Bam. Oh, in your face.
Yeah, 50, 60 bucks. No, I don't.
The first announcer said, "How much do you think that costs?" And the original response to that was, "I don't know, maybe 50 or 60 bucks." Definitely not the right response to that one. Honestly, it's going to cost a lot more than 50 or 60 bucks. And like I said, that shit made me jump. It made me pop out of my seat. So I couldn't imagine. I had to drop you guys that with no explanation whatsoever. So you get that full experience like myself. Now, This last word on the tweet, I got to give you guys a little bit of an explanation of it before we get into it, because here on the Huddle Chat Sports Show, you know that we really don't typically like to get into politics that much. We don't like to dwell on politics that much. But this here one on the tweet actually right here comes straight from Charles Barkley, one of the NBA on TNT hosts. And he was covering the March Madness tournament just yesterday. And he actually had a really good excerpt before the game in one, or I think it was actually during halftime. And like I said, we don't like to dwell on politics here on the Huddle Chat Sports Show, but what Charles Barkley said it just spoke so well. You couldn't have said it better yourself. I'm waiting for it to load up here now so that I can play it for you guys. Give me just one moment. Let's see here. And if you, while we're waiting on it, like we always do, if you do not consume marijuana, that's perfectly fine. But if you do, now's the time that I ask you if you would like to. Spark it up, smoke them if you got them. Join me in on the sesh. We do like to infuse marijuana throughout the podcast here on the Huddle Chat Sports Show. So it seems like I'm not going to be able to get the video clip, which is unfortunate. So I'm going to have to post it here on the Huddle Chat Sports Show. But like I said, we're not going to really discuss it too terribly much. I just really appreciated the words that Charles Barkley had to say and the way that he was able to express himself, basically saying that politics and the government are set up in the way that, no matter whether you are Democratic or Republican, they're kind of set up for us to dislike each other for almost no reason. We all have similar lifestyles. We live in each other's neighborhoods, and it's all set up for us to dislike each other. Like I said, we don't dwell into politics very much. So I actually did share the video clip on my Facebook on the Huddle Chat Sports Show. So after the episode, if you're interested in the video clip, make sure you scroll over to my Facebook and check that out. Now, speaking about March Madness, like I said, yesterday was that March Madness championship basketball game for the men's side of things. And honestly, it ended in amazing fashion. As I predicted with Eric Holmes over on the Rick T podcast, Baylor ended up coming up victorious in the men's basketball championship. And it was a wire-to-wire victory. At no point did Baylor lose the lead that they created early on in the game. And they were able to shut down the superstar of the March Madness tournament, in my eyes, that was Jalen Suggs. I think Jalen Suggs made the biggest impact to me, similar to what John Morant did a couple years back in the March Madness tournament, somebody that I didn't pay too terribly much attention to going into the March Madness tournament, but coming out of the March Madness tournament, I couldn't keep my eyes off of that man, and I was actually pulling for Jalen Suggs. But Baylor ended up coming out on top of Gonzaga. It was a really good game, but honestly, Baylor kind of ran through Gonzaga for the entire process of that game. And like I said, it was a wire-to-wire victory. And it was one of those things that you were kind of disappointed to see at the end of March Madness, that there weren't really too terribly many Cinderella stories. There wasn't much going on in that aspect. I mean, brackets got busted. The bracket got wild, as it always does. But at the end of it, you ended up with the two best teams on paper going into the March Madness tournament as the two teams that ended up playing in the March Madness championship. So it all made sense. It was like I said, with over on the Rick T podcast, it's you don't ever really like to predict the two best teams playing against each other, but you do also like to see the two most competitive teams. You do like to see that process come out from March Madness, and I'm really happy about it. Me personally, though, watching throughout the entire process of March Madness, I didn't get to watch a ton of games, but my favorite game to watch, the most interesting game that I saw throughout this entire process, was going to be that UCLA Gonzaga game. It was interesting as hell from beginning to end, and ended with that amazing Jalen Suggs buzzer beater to take them into that championship. And that one's one of those games that March Madness is all about. It's one of those games that shows, why we get into March Madness and what the pageantry of March Madness is all about. And for lack of better words, it depicted the madness that is this March Madness tournament. And like I said, that's my favorite game of the entire tournament. But I'd like to know your opinion outside of the championship, even including the championship. What was your favorite game, your favorite moment of this NCAA tournament? Drop it down in the comments for a chance to be posted up on the episode here. Just like Don Clark, my mom says, I need that gear. Thank you so much. And we're going to be getting that gear out to everybody. So make sure you share this out to your friends. Get us up to that 420 follower mark. Let's see what Mike Clark says. I heard Trevor Lawrence says he doesn't want to go to the Jaguars. Thoughts? Mike Clark, we are going to get back into that comment here in just a minute when I do talk about the NFL. I just want to wrap up this couple quick things about the MLB really fast. I'm coming right back to your comment, I promise you. Now, like I said, with March Madness, it ended up being almost what you kind of don't want to call out. You don't want to predict with Baylor and Gonzaga, but ultimately Baylor ends up coming out on top. And honestly, I want to know what you think that this March Madness tournament is going to be most remembered for. Is it going to be that Jalen Suggs buzzer beater? Is it going to be that Baylor blowout? Is it going to be the fact, which is what I think, just the return from COVID and how amazing that March Madness tournament was? I think this March Madness tournament is going to go down in history as the return to March Madness, the return from COVID. Because if you remember, we missed out March Madness last year, and it was great to have it all back this year. Now, we are going to be going into the NFL because we're coming up on the NFL draft. And as you know here on the Huddle Chat Sports Show, the NFL is kind of our main point of view, our main topic that we got going on here on the Huddle Chat Sports Show. We like to talk about the NFL mostly. We do delve into all other sports, but the NFL is kind of where we get our gas from. And this week in the NFL, up until yesterday, has been extremely quiet. It's fairly obvious that the NFL draft is coming up, and everybody has made their early opening door moves in the NFL free agency in the NFL opening season. But now you're kind of starting to see everybody kind of settle down and wait until the NFL draft to kind of pick and choose those holes that they can fill in the draft and what they're going to need to go out and sign after the draft in free agency. Now, I want to go back to a comment that I read just a second ago from Mike Clark. I heard Trevor Lawrence says he doesn't want to go to the Jags. What are your thoughts on that? Now, as we all know, Trevor Lawrence is going to be predicted the number one pick in the NFL draft going to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And it's no, secret to anybody, any NFL fan. The Jacksonville Jaguars really are not that great of a team. They did have a flash in the pan a couple years back where they got talked about a lot in the NFL, and they were actually predicted as like one of the top AFC teams. They were predicted to take Patrick Mahomes or Tom Brady to that AFC championship and compete with one of those two teams. Everybody was that hype on the Jacksonville Jaguars the year after they got Blake Bortles and Leonard Fournette and started to become a kind of decent team. But I can understand why Trevor Lawrence does not want to go to the Jaguars. Unfortunately, it's it's in a very small aspect in Trevor Lawrence's hands. There's very few options that Trevor Lawrence has. We have seen trades where certain players like Eli Manning have come out and said, I refuse to play for this team that I'm going to be drafted to. And when you take that route as an NFL player, especially as a quarterback, a potential franchise-changing quarterback, a potential franchise-changing player, you don't come out in your NFL career and start immediately by giving yourself that diva platform, that diva persona, that diva tagline that will always follow with you. Let me turn this light on. I just realized it's not on. Let me get you a little brightness on my face, make it look a little bit better. There we are. Now, I think Trevor Lawrence, of course, nobody would want to go to the Jacksonville Jaguars because right now the Jacksonville Jaguars don't have much in the way of draft capital in the future. They don't have much in the way of salary cap coming up down the line. They don't have much in the way of young talent that's going to be around Trevor Lawrence. They don't have much in the way of really anything outside of this number one draft pick. They're a struggling franchise with a lot of issues through the front office, the head coach, all sorts of different ways. And I think Trevor Lawrence is in the right to say, I don't want to go to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Unfortunately, that's what comes with being the number one pick in the NFL draft. You typically go to the worst team in the NFL the year before. That's how it ends up working out. I don't think Trevor Lawrence ends up going anywhere else besides the Jacksonville Jaguars, unless the Jacksonville Jaguars shock the world and pick somebody else. I don't think Trevor Lawrence ends up holding out or refusing to sign with the Jacksonville Jaguars. He just is going to have to struggle through those first couple of years. Unfortunately for Trevor Lawrence, he has that effect that we sometimes don't like to see from a young quarterback coming out of the draft. We don't really want to see all the time a quarterback come out of the draft and get put right into that starting position because 9 times out of 10, maybe not that many times, maybe more like 6 times out of 10, you can ruin a young quarterback with getting him into that game action and putting too much pressure on him too early in his career. So I think Trevor Lawrence is in his right mind by not wanting to go to the Jaguars and not wanting to have all that pressure on his back to be able to develop as an NFL quarterback and become the best quarterback that he can be, as opposed to just one of those number one draft picks that we end up in a couple of years talking about why did this not work out. He ends up being an RG3. He ends up being a Colt McCoy, a Johnny Manziel, a quarterback that comes out of the draft, a Sam Darnold, a quarterback that comes out of the draft as somebody that you're expecting to be a franchise-changing quarterback, like Mitchell Trubisky did for the Chicago Bears, and it ends up being somebody that you didn't even think about was the 4th, 5th, the Trey Lance, the Justin Fields of the draft. So I think Trevor Lawrence is in his right mind by not wanting to go to the Jacksonville Jaguars. But unfortunately, a lot of things are not looking in his favor. He said the Jags could trade back a pick or two and go Wilson or Fields. Now, I do agree with that. The problem that the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to have is that Wilson or Fields are damn near as good as Trevor Lawrence, and a lot of people have a lot of hype on Fields and Wilson. So I don't think either San Francisco or New York are going to be willing to spend that extra amount of money, that extra capital to move up just those couple of extra spots, because they're going to be more than happy letting Wilson or Fields fall to them. It's kind of one of those, just like in a fantasy football draft. Nobody wants that first pick because you don't want to be the one to make the wrong choice. Having that second or third pick, you kind of let them pick for you, and you let that guy fall to you, and you can always come out and say, this was always the man. This was always our choice, and build that confidence in him with less pressure and just with less expectation. You've seen expectation and pressure ruin NFL draft prospects like Ricky Williams and certain people in the past, just because that is a lot. But I don't think either San Francisco or New York are going to be willing to pay the amount that they would have to just to slide up one spot to get Trevor Lawrence, who they may not even see as much better as Wilson or Fields. So that's what I do feel about the Trevor Lawrence situation. Mike Clark, I'm glad you agree with me. But there was one really big move in the NFL this week. Like I said, it's been fairly quiet up to this point in the last few weeks. But it has been there's been one big move, and we got to break it down. So yesterday, the New York Jets, as we've discussed, have the number 2 pick in the NFL draft. A lot of signs are pointing to the New York Jets going to Zach Wilson or Justin Fields, like we were just speaking about with the Jaguars, what they could do. A lot of signs are pointing to them going with Zach Wilson. They like Zach Wilson. He fits their play scheme, but Justin Fields would also work as well. So almost every single sign before yesterday was pointing to the New York Jets at number 2 going with the quarterback pick. Now, yesterday, finally, the New York Jets were able to get rid of Sam Darnold, who they had been trying to trade all offseason, and I'm glad the Indianapolis Colts were not the suckers to bite on that bait. Because Sam Darnold, as much potential as I think he has, as good of a quarterback as I think he hasn't proven really much to me to give me or my team a better chance to win than any of the other quarterbacks that are coming out of this draft, especially with how good this quarterback draft is and not knowing how stacked the quarterbacks are coming in to next year. Because I remember last year going out of it, we knew Trevor Lawrence was going to stay a year. We knew a lot of the better quarterbacks were staying for that year and staying for this draft. We don't know much about next year's draft coming up, and I haven't heard much about a ton of quarterbacks being hyped up as top 10, top 5 potential picks in the NFL draft. So this is going to be a year to pull the trigger on a quarterback if you want to. But yesterday, the New York Jets traded away Sam Darnold, and they ended up finding the sucker to bite on the bait. And as surprising as it is, the Carolina Panthers ended up signing Sam Darnold. They actually did not spend very much at all to get Sam Darnold. They ended up giving up, I think, a 6th round in this year and 2 draft picks in next year's draft. So really nothing much this year, and a little bit of future capital that they'll be giving up to acquire Sam Darnold. They've also come out and said Teddy Bridgewater will be moved, and they have actually also given Teddy Bridgewater the respect and to let him go out and have a say in where he goes. They're letting him speak to different teams. They're kind of letting him choose where he would like to go, and not just trading him and screwing him out like you see a lot of NFL organizations do to players 9 times out of 10. But my question about this is, I have a hard time choosing who the winner of this trade is. I think the New York Jets win this trade just because they acquire that extra draft capital and get rid of the problem that they were going to have of having Sam Darnold and that future draft pick that they get, whether it's Zach Wilson, Fields, Mac Jones, whoever they pick at that number 2 pick. I think that Sam Darnold was never realistically going to be the number 1 quarterback in New York, and that was that was a decision they made a long time ago, which is why Sam Darnold was rumored to be traded so far back. Now, what I do find interesting is actually the Miami Dolphins and the New York Jets, if you look at their track record over the last couple of years, have practically done almost the exact same thing. The New York Jets and the Miami Dolphins both fired Adam Gase and then traded away the quarterback that they acquired during the Adam Gase tenure for draft capital. The Miami Dolphins ended up getting rid of Ryan Tannehill to the Tennessee Titans, and we know who Ryan Tannehill has become, at least an above average quarterback. So signs point well for Sam Darnold to be a decent quarterback. He's going back and reconnecting with Robbie Anderson, the wide receiver, who he had a pretty decent connection with in New York last season, just in the few games that Robbie Anderson was still a New York Jet before he became a Carolina Panther. So he's reconnecting with old targets that he has. He gets one of the best running backs in the game in Christian McCaffrey. So he gets a brand new situation, and he's not going into something like the New York Jets where it's just a dumpster fire that they're trying to fill any hole that they possibly can by drafting best man available. I think he has more potential to be a good quarterback with the Panthers than he did with the Jets. Now, my question comes from the Panthers. Who sat in the front office and really sat there and looked at each other and said, man, Teddy Bridgewater, if we were able to upgrade somehow, that'd be great. You know, it'd be an awesome upgrade from Teddy Bridgewater? Sam Darnold. I think Sam Darnold from Teddy Bridgewater gives us such an amazing, like, who sat in Carolina and came up with that idea, with that opportunity. Now, what I do find interesting is what I've heard after the Sam Darnold trade is that the Carolina Panthers have come out and said that getting Sam Darnold has not taken them out of the opportunity to draft a quarterback in this year's draft. I think it all depends on what falls to Carolina, and you very well may see the Carolina Panthers go with a Trey Lance or one of those more underrated late first round, early second round quarterbacks that they can bring in, compete with Sam Darnold, and at least have a decent backup if Sam Darnold ends up not working out. The Sam Darnold experience ends up not being what they thought it was going to be, because at the end of the day, they didn't really give up much in the ways of acquiring Sam Darnold, but they feel less bad about having Teddy, because if Teddy Bridgewater stays, you almost have to give him that starting position because he's waited for, he's almost earned it. So getting rid of Teddy Bridgewater and bringing in two new options, potentially with still having that option to draft quarterback in the draft, I can see why the Panthers would make that move. I just don't see Sam Darnold being the upgrade that they're thinking that it's going to be. But like I said, Sam Darnold has some great opportunity with the Carolina Panthers. I think it's going to be absolutely interesting to see what Sam Darnold does for the Carolina Panthers, because I do think that he's going to give the Carolina Panthers a better opportunity to win. I believe Teddy Bridgewater has gotten his opportunity, and Teddy Bridgewater has kind of proven to be nothing much more than a decent backup quarterback, not somebody that you want to be a starting quarterback or your franchise guy. So I think the Jets ended up winning this trade because they were always going to end up going with the quarterback of the future in this draft. But you really have to look at the potential that the Carolina Panthers have, because you can't officially say who won this trade until you see how Sam Darnold performs, if he becomes the man that the Carolina Panthers are hoping, or whether the Carolina Panthers draft a quarterback and Sam Darnold just ends up becoming the career backup. We have a lot to see. This is a very intriguing situation for some teams that we don't speak about very often. So it is really nice to see that move being made. I think it's good for both sides, honestly. Now, outside of that trade, you're looking at, honestly, like I said, it's been very quiet for the most part. We're looking at a lot of rumors. So I'm here to decipher and help you guys pick out what is fact and what is fodder in the NFL rumors this week. Now, so we've all heard that Russell Wilson is unhappy in Seattle, and Russell Wilson may be moving on. And we're all hearing the different rumors of where Russell Wilson may be going. He wants to change a historic franchise like the Bears, something or other like that. And we're going to actually be able to see what Russell Wilson does. But honestly, from what I've come out to see today, almost a breaking news, that something you really want to pay attention to, but you take with a grain of salt, because it is a rumor. Carlos Dunlap, the defensive end of the Seattle Seahawks, said that before he re-signed his contract, he spoke to Russell Wilson himself and made sure the quarterback was going to be re-signing with the team before signing his own contract. And Russell Wilson assured him that he would be staying with the team, that he is here to stay in Seattle. So you're hearing from Russell Wilson's teammates, hearing from people themselves that are saying they've come out, spoken to Russ himself, and Russ is staying in Seattle. So I'm actually happy to hear that. I never one time actually thought Russell Wilson was going to be moved. Similar to Deshaun Watson, I don't think Deshaun Watson this season is going to be moved, but I really don't see Russell Wilson getting moved from the Seattle Seahawks. I think he's just trying to do what Aaron Rodgers did a few years back, and trying to kind of light a fire under the Seahawks' ass, because since their really couple of years of dominance in the NFC and going to the Super Bowl in multiple years and even winning a Super Bowl, the Seattle Seahawks have kind of become a team that haven't even barely been able to make playoffs. So they really have a small window of opportunity where they can make a couple of changes and become one of those dangerous competitive teams again. But they also have that same amount of time that they could become irrelevant and become a team that needs to sell the team and get rid of Russell Wilson. But you're looking at Russell Wilson is going to be staying in Seattle, which is good news to hear. And that's also really awesome. And so like we discussed about, we've already talked about Trevor Lawrence going number 1. We've talked about the Jets still going quarterback at number 2. Now that they've gotten rid of Sam Darnold, the Jets are obviously going to go quarterback at number 2. The only decision is going to be Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, Trey Lance, Mac Jones. Which of those quarterbacks do they end up selecting in the NFL draft? And that's one of those, I think that's honestly going to be the biggest moment in the early draft because we all kind of expect the Jaguars going Trevor Lawrence. The biggest moment in the NFL draft is going to start out with that New York Jets pick. It's going to kind of set the tone for the rest of the draft and honestly the future of the NFL coming up here. I think it's going to be very reminiscent to that Mitchell Trubisky, Patrick Mahomes, Deshaun Watson time of the NFL drafts when a lot of heat were coming out. We're seeing a lot of our old quarterbacks, Phillip Rivers, Ben Roethlisberger coming to the end of his time. You know, we're seeing the quarterbacks that we grew up with kind of getting to the end of their career. So it's cool to see the great quarterbacks coming in, and they're all coming in right around the same time as well. I think this draft is going to be no different. Here in about 5 years, we're going to be discussing, you know, where teams should have picked differently. I don't think Trevor Lawrence is going to end up being the number 1, like the actual best player in this draft, but only time is going to be able to tell us what that is going to be. But I want to know what you guys think. Who do you think the New York Jets are going to go with that second pick after Trevor Lawrence gets taken by the Jacksonville Jaguars? Do you think they're going to go with Trey Lance? Do you think they're going to go with Zach Wilson like everybody is saying and everybody is pointing to? Do you think they would go with the better quarterback option that I think, which is Justin Fields? Let me know. Drop it in the comments, and let's talk about what is going to be going on in that in all of the upcoming draft picks because, as you know, the NFL draft is just a couple of weeks away. So, and then we're going to be moving on to the third pick. We've discussed the first pick and the second pick. Now moving on to the third pick in the NFL draft, I do want to talk about that San Francisco 49ers pick because there's been a lot of changes about that San Francisco 49ers pick. Originally, they did not have that third pick. We've all talked about them sliding up and acquiring that number 3 pick, which was a really big move for the 49ers. Now, the question is going to be where they go with that pick. A lot of signs moving up to this point have pointed at Mac Jones for the 49ers because he fits their scheme. He fits Kyle Shanahan, even though Justin Fields is the better quarterback. But today, Adam Schefter came out and he said that he basically confirmed that the San Francisco 49ers will be picking Mac Jones with the third pick in the NFL draft unless he goes in the number 1 or number 2 pick. Now, Adam Schefter, I mean, I have to believe what Adam Schefter says. He's got the insiders that everybody wishes to have. He's got the phone numbers that everybody wants in their phone. I believe what Adam Schefter says. So I don't see that the 49ers go anywhere. It's not just a rumor at this. It's not just a rumor at this point. It's not just a smoke screen. I think that the San Francisco 49ers really do end up going Mac Jones in the draft, which I don't think would be the smart choice for them because I do believe Justin Fields would be the better quarterback. But Mac Jones would be the better puppet, the better quarterback to fit into their scheme. But I think all in all, Justin Fields would be the better choice. But like I said last week, I think I would rather see Justin Fields not go there and compete with Jimmy Garoppolo and compete for that starting position and have a better opportunity somewhere that he may be able to go somewhere like the Falcons and stay up under Matt Ryan for a year, learn for a year, and come out and show that. I would like him to go to a better situation than the San Francisco 49ers. So I do actually kind of like hearing the news of Mac Jones going to San Francisco with that third pick. Now, the last rumor I want to talk about today, because really we're just focusing on those top 4 picks because that's where all the sauce comes from. That's where all the heat, the spice is coming from in the NFL. Today, a lot of crazy-ass rumors have come out of Atlanta. So the first thing I see, the Atlanta Falcons are fielding calls, of course, and they're getting a lot of offers for that number 4 pick in the NFL draft. And they're really considering moving back in the draft and trading away and getting the capital, getting the players, whatever they would be receiving for that number 4 pick and moving backwards. But the problem that's going on with the Atlanta Falcons right now, the weird part about it is the next rumor that I heard. The next rumor was that the Atlanta Falcons are in almost an undecided situation right now where half of the ownership and coaches want them to go with a quarterback of the future and want them to pick quarterback in this next draft and start planning for the future, while other members of the Atlanta Falcons organizations don't want to, and that's why they're considering trading that 4th pick away, because they think Matt Ryan has, quote, at least 2 good years left in him. I think Matty Ice has been – it's been a while. It's honestly since that Super Bowl year. Matt Ryan has been just about an average quarterback, and I don't see him getting any better. The Falcons haven't made any moves around Matt Ryan to make him any better, and I think that the Falcons are a young team that's getting ready to kind of explode. They're just a couple of key pieces away from really making a difference on that team. But I do think that the Atlanta Falcons really do need to start planning on that quarterback of the future. It's like I said, I think that the best move for the Atlanta Falcons would be a Kansas City Chiefs style of thing, something where you're looking at Matt Ryan is coming to the end of his career, whether you like it or not. And you don't want to be stuck in a position where you have to draft that quarterback of the future. You would like to be able to draft him when he falls to you and be able to groom that quarterback and plan for the future from this point out, as opposed to looking at it and saying, let's keep the cards that we have, try to do something with this current roster. I don't see the Atlanta Falcons as being a team that can seriously think about competing for a Super Bowl this year in their current state. So I think the Atlanta Falcons kind of do need to start planning for the future. I think going with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers route and trying to stack the roster with older players, a last chance use style of drafting, a last chance style of free agency. I think that the Atlanta Falcons should go with a quarterback of the future that they can let sit up under Matt Ryan for a year, 2 years. And if Matt Ryan has 2 good years on everything, that's great. That's even more time to groom that quarterback of the future. But I don't think the Atlanta Falcons want to find themselves in a position where they're going to need to draft that quarterback of the future, because that's something that you would really want to avoid as an Atlanta Falcon. Because like I said, they do have some young explosive pieces at this current moment. Calvin Ridley's got some flashes. Julio's coming to the end of his career. Like, you're looking at the Atlanta Falcons as a team that is in one of 2 options. They can either build on the old men that they have, or just start building that young fire roster and go with an Indianapolis Colts style of franchising and just build through the draft, build through free agency, and trust the process. And that's what I think the Atlanta Falcons should do, because if not, they're going to find themselves in a situation similar to what the New Orleans Saints are right now, where you're almost wondering who is going to be the quarterback, and honestly, how well realistically is that quarterback going to play. Now, that's going to be doing it today for my NFL topics. Now, next week on the NFL, we got a lot of stuff coming for the NFL. Like I said, it's been a little quiet in the NFL, so we got to do a couple of different things here. Next week, I do want to talk all about the NFL draft, because that's what's coming up. Everybody's been talking about, including me, all of these top 5, 6 quarterbacks and these top 4 picks, picking those top 5 quarterbacks. Next week, we're going to be taking a deep dive into the top 5 non-quarterback prospects. We're talking about Pitts. We're talking about Sewell. We're talking about Jalen Hurts. We're going to be talking about not Jalen Hurts, Smith from Alabama. We're going to be talking about all those top 5 non-quarterback prospects in the NFL draft and what your team may be going with if they don't need that quarterback of the future. I'm also going to be discussing about what the Indianapolis Colts potentially will be doing with that 21st pick. And I would also like to hear from you guys, as I'm always asking you, drop in these comments, drop it on the Huddle Chat Sports Show Facebook page itself. Let me know what team you want to hear about. Let me know what pick you want to hear about. We will be taking a deep dive into the couple of picks, the later picks that people haven't really been talking about. Like I said, we're talking about the Colts at 21, and we may even be doing a full mock draft here on the Huddle Chat Sports Show next week that I'm going to be showing you guys. So make sure you drop in the comments what picks you want to hear about. You want to hear about that Bengals pick. You want to hear about that Cowboys pick. You want to hear about that Texans pick. What NFL team are you interested in? I'll do my research, look at what your team needs are, look at what the best fit for you guys are, and even if you guys should trade out of that pick. So go ahead, like I said, drop it in the comments. Let me know your team and what draft pick you would like me to speak about next week when we take a deep dive in on the NFL draft. Now, before I move into my next topics of the day, of course, I got to give you guys a quick sponsorship from a quick word from our sponsors over at Ma Energy. So bear with me just one moment. I'll be right back with you. Are you a real life gamer, otherwise known as a normal person who performs in their day-to-day life and then still tries to compete with those who don't have a life when it comes to video games? Are you struggling to balance long work days and squeezing in your gaming on late nights and the weekends?
Are you absolutely sick and tired of wasting your money pounding those sugary energy drinks just to stay competitive for a little bit longer? Well, don't let those long days or hard crashes ruin your gaming or experience. It's time to be a beast and try out MAW Energy and Focus. With MAW Energy, you can dominate and energize your performance with a specialized formula made specifically for gamers by gamers. Ditch those sugary energy drinks that just have you crashing at the end and get away from those pre-workouts with all the extra ingredients that you really don't need and get specialized energy made just for you. Try out MAW, stay awake, and compete with the best. MAW Energy. Game like a beast.
As you guys heard it there, MAW Energy, big sponsor over here on the show. This episode of the Huddle Chat Sports Show 34 will be, of course, presented to you by MAW Energy. I will be dropping a link down in the comments for you to be able to get 10% off any purchases you make on the MAW Energy website. And if you go to it right now, you get 60 free servings of MAW Energy, a month's supply of MAW Energy. It's time to ditch those sugary energy drinks, save yourself some money, and be a beast with MAW Energy. Now, before I dive into the NBA portion of the day, I do want to make a quick shout out over on the MLB. Some big news has struck the MLB this week, and some really big news for the city of Denver, Colorado. The MLB is actually going to be the MLB is going to be doing the All-Star game. They removed it from Atlanta due to some voter laws in Georgia. They removed it from Atlanta, and they are now actually moving the All-Star game and all the All-Star activities to homer-friendly Coors Field out in Denver, Colorado. I'm extremely excited about it. As you know, out here, I live in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and I'm super excited. I'm a big Rockies fan myself. And I'm extremely excited to see these all-star activities go on, especially the Home Run Derby. It's the first time that Colorado has been able to host the All-Star Weekend and the All-Star activities since 1998. So it's going to be a really fun time. Coors Field, despite how terrible the Colorado Rockies are consistently and historically, Coors Field is a great place to be. It's a party location, and it's always a top 5 place in ticket sales. Everyone loves Coors Field. It's one of the best baseball fields in Major League Baseball. So I'm extremely excited to see all the All-Star activities, and we are going to actually be attending the All-Star activities at all costs here at the Huddle Chat Sports Show. I'm going to do everything that I can to get myself at least one ticket to that All-Star weekend, and you're going to be getting some great footage here on the Huddle Chat Sports Show, and we are definitely going to be doing a lot of things coming up with Major League Baseball and those All-Star activities. I'd like to give a quick shout out to Rick T from the Rick T podcast. Yo, little girl just got out of gymnastics. What I miss. Shouts out to my boy Indo. Thank you so much, Rick T. I did want to, you came in perfect timing because I was just getting ready to shout you out. If you haven't seen it yet, this last Saturday, the day before Easter, I did a special appearance on the Rick T podcast with Eric Holmes Jr. And it was a great time. We had some great conversations and even got in a couple little small debates. And I encourage you guys, go back, check out that video, and check out the Rick T podcast. It's a great time. And I'm definitely going to be on that show a lot more often. And we are definitely going to be doing a lot more partnership with Rick T and Eric Holmes Jr. So make sure you guys stay tuned for that. Now, with that being said, I actually want to let you guys know here coming up next week are going to be some big changes for the Huddle Chat Sports Show. Like I said, stay tuned on the Facebook, on the social media, Twitter, YouTube, everything like that, because we are going to be making some really big changes here. I got to change the time due to my work schedule changing. So we're going to be having a new time, maybe even a new day for the Huddle Chat Sports Show. And we're going to be doing a lot of different things on the Huddle Chat Sports Show. So make sure you guys stay tuned over on the social media platforms because there's going to be a lot of stuff coming down the pipe, as well as we are going to be starting next week getting our first guests and co-hosts on the show, on the stream live. And it's going to be a great time. So if you have any interest or you know somebody that would love to be up on the Huddle Chat Sports Show, make sure you drop them in the comments, tag them in the video. Let me know who they are. Let me know if you want to be on the show. DM me, comment on anything, because I would love to get anybody on the show to smoke with me, chop it up about some sports. We're going to do the damn thing. We're going to do it right. So we got a lot of big things coming around the pipe, starting as early as next week's episode. So like I said, make sure you stay tuned on the social media platforms. Now, going back real quick to the Major League Baseball All-Star Weekend, moving to Denver, that reminds me that next week we are going to be discussing the Major League Baseball start of the season. I want to give it about a week so that way we can get a couple of big storylines, a couple of big trades, anything that's going to be going on. So next week, we are definitely going to be talking about the Major League Baseball Association, and we're going to be talking about the top 5 storylines to focus on in the MLB, as well as why Colorado Rockies fans like myself are so damn infuriated with the Colorado Rockies, and how we feel about that opening day victory against the Dodgers, the defending World Series champions, and what is success for a Colorado Rockies fan this year, despite how pissed off we may be with the Colorado Rockies and the rock pile themselves. So, like I said, make sure you stay tuned in next week. We're going to be getting all of that Major League Baseball conversation going in. Now, going back in, like I said, we're going to be talking about the NBA. Now, last week, like I said, again, I encourage you guys to check it out. Go back to the Rick T podcast. Check it out. Like Rick T said, let's go. Check out that Rick T podcast from this last week. We actually had a couple of really good conversations about the NBA that I wanted to talk about a little bit more here on the Huddle Chat Sports Show. The first thing was I wanted to talk about the Golden State Warriors. My boy Eric Holmes Jr. brought up a good thing, a good point. And so the other day, you may or may not have heard about it. The Golden State Warriors, the dominant, historically great Golden State Warriors that we have all heard and know so much about, lost a game to the Toronto Raptors, as average of a team as the Toronto Raptors are, by about 50-plus points the other day. It was, I believe, 77 to 130. That the Golden State Warriors took that routing by the Toronto Raptors. And Rick T and a lot of people have been asking, are the Golden State Warriors finished? Is this the end of the Golden State Warriors? Is the end of Steph Curry? Is this the end of the dynasty that we do know? As quick as they came in and became that great Golden State Warriors team, are they on the way out the door? And I think that shit is blasphemous. I'm tired of hearing ridiculousness like that. I told Rick T to himself, my boy Eric Holmes, I said, man, I'm tired of people overreacting to this kind of stuff. Golden State Warriors, yes, they took a terrible beating. But you look at what Golden State is going through right now. They don't have Klay Thompson, half of the Splash Brothers. Draymond Green was out for that game. Yes, Steph Curry was playing, but I remember him playing like a night or two before against the Chicago Bulls, and Steph Curry missed at least 50% of the game coming in and out. He's got a tailbone issue right now. And with that tailbone issue, they're playing back-to-back days and sometimes with only a day in between games, and they're flying from state to state. The rumors are saying that Steph Curry can't even sit down on the flights from state to state. He has to stand the entire flight because his tailbone problem is so bad. So he's missing a ton of time. He's not playing at 100%. However, Steph Curry is still the greatest shooter of all time. Klay Thompson is going to come back healthy at some point. Draymond Green is no longer their center. He's no longer the centerpiece of that team. That was one of the biggest issues that even the 73-9 Warriors had, is they never had a big man. Well, newsflash to everybody. The Golden State Warriors this last year drafted James Wiseman, who I think is going to be the rookie of the year now that LaMelo Ball is out for the rest of the season with that wrist injury. James Wiseman has come out and proven to be everything that the Golden State Warriors needed on their team. So now you can slide Draymond Green, the undersized center, out of the center position and put him at the power forward position and let him play more of that wing role and still kind of play that Draymond Green big man role without having to be the center. You still get that fire from Draymond. You still are going to have the greatest shooter of all time with one of the top 10 greatest shooters of all time himself as well, Klay Thompson coming back. So the Splash Brothers are going to be back in full effect. You're going to have that centerpiece that they have not had the entire time. And the Golden State Warriors have great draft capital, and they have a lot of money actually still to spend. Let's not sit here and pretend or act like the Golden State Warriors are anything like that Brooklyn Nets team. As much as you may have hated the Golden State Warriors' success and how great that team was, they did not build a super team like we saw with LeBron or like we've seen with the Brooklyn Nets. Yes, they acquired Kevin Durant, but that was after they were 73-9. You would argue to say that Kevin Durant made that team worse because they had that worse record and they weren't as good of a team. They were still able to come out and win the championship that year, but Kevin Durant was not what made the Golden State Warriors good. They were a great team, historically great, before Kevin Durant joined that team. So I don't need to hear that super team mess. The Golden State Warriors built, and they trust the process, and they built through the draft, and they waited, and they took their time, and everybody just flourished at the same time. Everything clicked at the same time right when they got their head coach, Steve Kerr. So Steve Kerr has been coaching the Golden State Warriors in the right direction, and I don't think it's time for the Warriors to panic. At the end of the day, you're looking at this NBA, especially in the Western Conference. Everything is fairly decided. All those NBA teams are fairly powerful. Even as a Chicago Bulls fan, we're fighting to get into playoffs, and I really don't care to see us in the playoffs because we're just going to get jacked out of the playoffs. We're going to get fucked up in the playoffs by one of these dominant teams, and it's not going to be fun to watch. It's great. We made the playoffs just to get dominated, maybe even potentially swept by a Brooklyn Nets team, by a stacked Clippers team, by a Utah Jazz team that has the best record in the NBA. So the Golden State Warriors realistically are not going to compete for a title this season without Klay Thompson in the lineup and missing some of those key pieces. So I think the Golden State Warriors are doing themselves no favors by winning any games and competing for playoff contention. They want a better chance to get into the lottery. They want a better chance to draft the best players available. I think the Golden State Warriors are still a destination that people want to go to, and people want to sign at because of Steph, because of Klay, because of Steve Kerr. That Golden State Warriors team is still a good team, but you have to consider the fact that they played so many years of extended seasons and long playoff and finals runs. At a certain point, their bodies were going to have to break down. We're just seeing the problems that come with being such a dominant team for so long. Even the Patriots, after a while, had to take a couple years off. I don't think the Golden State Warriors are going to come back potentially and be that dominant Golden State Warriors team that they have been without adding a couple pieces into their lineup. But I think the Golden State Warriors do not need to panic. They do not need to worry. They are still the Golden State Warriors. It's just not the year for them this year. And the same thing is going to be said about the Los Angeles Lakers. A viewer called in to the Rick T podcast and posed the question to us, with Anthony Davis being hurt this year, with LeBron being hurt this year, do you think Kuzma, do you think some of those role players do have that ability to step up and perform and put this team on their back and take them to the playoffs? I don't think realistically the Los Angeles Lakers miss the playoffs because of the team that they have built around them. And when LeBron becomes healthy, he's like the Aaron Rodgers of the NBA, or Aaron Rodgers is the LeBron of the NFL. Like, just having him on your team, no matter who your role players are, gives you a chance to win. But I think the Los Angeles Lakers struggles are going to come from is that they have not been a full team all year. Anthony Davis has been hurt all year. She said, if this whole sports thing doesn't work for you, you should do advertising. Well, thank you so much for that. You know, I do my thing for my sponsors. But if the Los Angeles Lakers this year, their issue is going to be that they have not been a full team all year. With all the injuries that they've had, they still don't know how Montrezl Harrell fits into the lineup. They still don't know how some of these pieces they've added flow with the starting lineup and flow with the team. I think that the Los Angeles Lakers are going to be a playoff team and ultimately get knocked out of the playoffs due to the fact that they don't have that ebb and flow. They don't have that chemistry that you would want out of a team that's playing with two superstars and a bunch of average-ass role players. But I think that the Los Angeles Lakers do not need to panic. I think that this actually may be a good situation for the Los Angeles Lakers because you're looking at Kyle Kuzma, you're looking at Caruso, you're looking at some of those role players that may potentially be part of the future of the Los Angeles Lakers. And you're giving them that opportunity to put the team on their back, to play without LeBron, to play without Anthony Davis, and become a team that we can look at and say, what realistically do we need to add and remove from this Los Angeles Lakers roster after LeBron retires here in a couple years? Because LeBron, as great as he is, only got so much time left in him that he can play 36 minutes a game every year. Yeah, right. So the Lakers are going to have to potentially start thinking about someday here in the next, 2, 3, 4, 5, if you're lucky, years ahead of LeBron James, because Anthony Davis is going to be that cornerstone, that centerpiece of the Los Angeles Lakers. And you're going to have to see which players are going to be the real deal and that you can keep around those superstars and that you can build around, and what players do you need to get rid of in order to acquire the capital to become the Los Angeles Lakers team that you're going to need to be after LeBron James retires. So I think the Lakers don't really need to hit the panic button. Like I said, they're very similar to the Golden State Warriors in where in 2022 they're going to be a dominant team. They're still going to be a scary team. But I think that the Los Angeles Lakers are just it's just not going to be their year, and especially because a couple of teams have been taken off. I think one team in particular has got my attention a little bit more than the others coming out of the NBA trade deadline. Real quick, I want to pop up to Rick T. Got a question. What What do you think about Deshaun Watson? Who do you think he's done after all of this? I'll get to that here in just 1 second for you, Richie. Let me wrap up this NBA topic because I don't want to go on too long and get distracted. But real quick, so what I do think is, with speaking about how the Lakers have kind of fallen from grace, with speaking about right now, you look at the Brooklyn Nets, even them, they're struggling with injury. James Harden is hurt. You're looking at Kevin Durant. I can't even tell you the last time Kevin Durant actually put on a pair of basketball shoes and stepped out there and played basketball. Kyrie's been putting the team on his back, and you're looking at even the Chicago Bulls. Let me repeat that. The Chicago Bulls were able to beat the Brooklyn Nets this last week, which is awesome as a Chicago Bulls fan, but I know that there's a reason behind that. You're looking at a lot of those really dominant teams struggling with injuries going into this last 20 games of the season. And a couple of weeks back, we talked about the NBA biggest pretenders and contenders. And I kind of said that for the most part, everybody realistically is a contender outside of the Clippers and the Lakers because the Brooklyn Nets are so dominant. But now you're looking at everybody kind of struggling with those injuries. And I think one team in particular made some moves during the NBA trade deadline that seriously helped them take that next step. And I think that we all need to start giving them a lot more respect than we already are, and seriously consider them as one of the two teams that may be competing with the Brooklyn Nets for the NBA Finals trophy this year. The Denver Nuggets acquiring Aaron Gordon may honestly be one of the best moves in the NBA in recent memory, just in the last few years. It's a very quiet move. It's not a move that's as big as James Harden to the Brooklyn Nets, but Aaron Gordon, a player who has superstar potential, who has explosive potential, was struggling on the Orlando Magic, a player that you really only knew him because of his NBA dunk contest wins, because the Orlando Magic are such a putrid basketball team consistently over and over again, and they just don't have any pieces. So the Denver Nuggets go out and acquire Aaron Gordon, and it works out so well for the Nuggets in so many ways. It makes their offense that much more explosive. Already a top 5 offensive unit, Aaron Gordon just adds to the depth of the big man on that team. He allows you to play Nikola Jokic and Aaron Gordon play a little bit more big man basketball, take a little bit of the pressure at the big man spot off of the biggest player on your team in Nikola Jokic. So he creates more offense for them. He takes pressure off their superstars, but the biggest thing that he's going to help them with is their interior defense, which is the one area that the Denver Nuggets struggle with, is because Nikola Jokic is great, but he is the only big man in realism that they have until they acquired Aaron Gordon. So now they're going to be able to improve on the one area that they had been struggling with. And you've just seen it already. Aaron Gordon coming to that team has just really set it off. A couple weeks back when I gave you my NBA pretenders and contenders, I said the Denver Nuggets were a damn good team. And they were just missing like 1 or 2 pieces that could really take this team to the next level. I think the fact that they really lost none of their actual players, none of their actual fire, none of their actual core members of their team, and were able to acquire such a great explosive player, I think that Aaron Gordon becomes the skeleton key that the Denver Nuggets need to become one of the most competitive teams in the NBA and one of the scariest rosters coming up, just not this year, but in the next years to come, because you're looking at Murray, Jokic, Porter Jr., all of them are extremely young. Even Aaron Gordon is fairly young himself. So all of their core pieces now are extremely young, and they can continue to build on them, and they have them for not very expensive at all at the current moment. So I think the Denver Nuggets, not just this year, are going to be one of the 2 teams that compete with the Brooklyn Nets, with the Lakers having all the injuries and kind of having them fall from grace, especially because the Lakers are knocking themselves out of the top spots in the conference standings, which means they're going to have to play the toughest teams coming into it all, like the Utah Jazz, like the Denver Nuggets, like the Clippers. They're going to have to come up and fight through the toughest teams all the way through the finals, which is something that LeBron James has never had to do. LeBron James is great, but at the end of the day, he's never had to compete every single series going into the NBA Finals, and that's going to be the downfall of the Los Angeles Lakers this year. The chemistry and the fact that they were at the current moment continuously downfalling through those standings, and they're going to have to compete. But like I said, I think that Denver Nuggets team is a team you really need to start focusing on, and may potentially be, if not the Clippers, the team that has to try to knock off that Brooklyn Nets team when it is all said and done at the end of this year. Now, I'd like to wrap up today's talk with the UFC. I skipped over the UFC last week, and I really did not want to, but I'm honestly really glad that I did, because it allowed me to get a little bit more information, a little bit more stuff coming in the UFC. And honestly, this week, because of course, as the fights approach, we are going to be discussing each fight more in depth and more in detail. But UFC fight fans have gotten treated. Over the first quarter of the year, we had a lot of highly anticipated matchups. We had that first Kamaru Usman fight. We had the really big Israel Adesanya, Amanda Nunes card that kind of disappointed us at the end of the day. We had the Stipe Miocic fight. I mean, we had so many fights that we were looking forward to coming down the pipe in that first quarter of the year. Now that we've already passed all those, this last weekend or the weekend before, we saw Francis Ngannou, obliterate Stipe Miocic and establish that he's maybe one of the most scary UFC heavyweights to ever hold the gold. And we were all talking about before going into that fight, that the fight for Stipe Miocic and Francis Ngannou, no, it wasn't a championship fight. Nobody gave a fuck about the fact that they were fighting for heavyweight gold. Basically, everybody was saying that Stipe Miocic and Francis Ngannou were competing for the opportunity, for the soul, like I said, for the opportunity to be blessed with the ability to fight John Jones. It didn't matter that they were going to get the gold. The winner of this fight was going to get to fight John Jones. And John Bones Jones, as big as a John Bones Jones fan as I am, God damn, John Bones Jones has been pissed me off this week. And John Bones Jones is really getting to the point that you're starting to make me sit here and think, John, are you a little scared of Francis Ngannou? I know he punches as hard as a Ford Escort at full capacity speed, at redline speed, and that shit is damn scary. I know you haven't fought in over 2 years. I know you haven't passed a drug test in over 4 years. I know you have never fought in the heavyweight division before. But John Jones, are you a little scared, my man? Is the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in UFC history a little bit scared of Francis Ngannou? Because it's starting to seem like it. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, John Bones Jones, immediately after the Francis Ngannou fight, tweets, "Show me the money," and it reportedly has a conversation with Dana White in which he was offered $8 to $10 million for the Francis Ngannou fight, which any UFC fighter would happily accept. John Bones Jones declined it and basically acted as if it was disrespect. He said, "Tui, I need more than that. I don't like the offer that you're giving me, Dana White. I want Conor McGregor money." If Conor McGregor was asking for higher amounts of money, and he went on a big Twitter barrage and went insane on Twitter, asking about, talking about, if Conor was talking about this and that. He's basically saying that he wants Conor McGregor money, which I can understand. He says every UFC fighter really just, once they get to the point of that they've fought all their fights that they need to, they just want that payday. They want to fight for what they've earned and what they deserve. And I get it, John. I 100%. I agree with you. I fully feel that John Bones Jones should be able to fight for a really high purse in the UFC. Now, when he's talking Conor McGregor money, let's take a look at what Conor McGregor money makes. We all know Conor McGregor's got a lot of goddamn money. He's got so much money that you even question the fact, should Conor McGregor even fight anymore? Does he even want to fight anymore? It's hard to wake up hungry when you're waking up in silk sheets. It's a saying that you're hearing, and it's swirling around Conor McGregor's head right now as we speak. So you're seeing that anybody wants Conor McGregor money. Conor McGregor does at the end of the day. If you look at the top 5 highest selling pay-per-views in UFC history, 3 of them are Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor's lowest selling pay-per-view was against Donald Cowboy Cerrone, one of his most recent fights this last year. That was one of his lowest selling pay-per-views, and still a top 10 UFC selling pay-per-view of all time. That fight did more than John Bones Jones' highest selling fight. John Bones Jones' highest selling fight was Daniel Cormier the second time. And he did not even make nearly as much money as Conor McGregor did in his worst selling pay-per-view. So let's just put that out there first and foremost. Secondly, the most amount of money ever made by a UFC fighter was, you can guess it, Conor McGregor when he fought Khabib Nurmagomedov. Conor McGregor came away from the Khabib Nurmagomedov making $3 million. Granted, he probably would have made more if he secured the victory. But that's the highest. That's the most a UFC fighter has ever been paid after a fight. $3 million, John Bones Jones. And Dana White offered you 8 to 10 million. So already off tops, Dana White is offering John Bones Jones more money than anybody's ever been paid in a UFC fight in history. John Bones Jones says that's not enough. Let me give you a number. Would you like to guess what the number is that John Bones Jones dropped? We'll do the Story of the Explorer style. I'll wait. No, it wasn't 12. It wasn't 15. It was 50 million John Bones Jones is asking for. So John Bones Jones is saying that even though I've never become even close to selling some of the most UFC pay-per-views of all time, I would like 15 times more than anybody's ever been paid all time to fight after not fighting for 2 years, after not passing a drug test in 4 years, and after never fighting in the heavyweight division. Honestly, I don't even think John Bones Jones should be fighting for gold in his first heavyweight fight. I think he should fight a Derek Lewis or one of the number one contenders and let that be the person that competes with Francis Ngannou. I just don't think that John Bones Jones originally should be even getting the opportunity to fight for UFC gold, considering his situation. And then you're looking at the fact that as much as I love John Bones Jones and as good as a fighter as he is, his fights are fairly boring. John Bones Jones hasn't really had very many interesting fights outside of the technical aspect of the sport. So John Bones Jones, I feel like just what you're seeing, what you're seeing and the things you're hearing from John Bones Jones, it's almost sounding like he's scared. You could have just said you don't want to fight Francis. Now, with all that being said, I have seen recent tweets from John Bones Jones saying that, he's recently had a sit down with Dana White. They've come to an agreement and some more details will be announced soon. So that is my opinion before official details have been announced. Maybe this was all a smokescreen. John Bones Jones was just trying to get a little bit of following, something. I'm not quite sure. But at the current moment, I think John Bones Jones is coked out right now. What you talking about? Now, coming up this weekend, we had this last weekend, we actually got taken away from one of our ESPN fight nights. It was Darren Till versus Vettori. And Darren Till caught an injury, unfortunately, I believe it was. I don't think it was COVID related. I believe it was an injury that forced Darren Till to have to pull up out of the fight. And stepping up for Darren Till is actually one of my most favorite fighters to watch in recent memory. Is going to be Kevin Holland. And I actually am so happy that he took this fight, despite the fact that he just fought Brunson less than a month ago. I think this is really good for Holland because the Brunson fight, you could tell that it was very disappointing for Kevin Holland outside of the fact that he lost because he let himself get beat. He let himself get nervous. He let that first pay-per-view, that first main event, he let that get to him. Not very much like you saw with Aljamain Sterling against Peter Yan. He didn't have all the unnecessary energy, but he allowed himself to get played into that whack-ass strategy that Derek Brunson had and just get laid on top of for that entire 3-round matchup and just kind of get points scored on him. And you could tell it was disappointing because Kevin Holland wants to fight. He's a good fighter. He's an interesting fighter. So I think that him turning around quick, like this quick, is going to be able to allow him to kind of recover quickly from that loss that he took from Brunson, kind of avoid the mental struggles that he would go through, and allow himself to get right back on track as quick as possible. Of course, he's got to still be in shape from the Brunson fight. You can't imagine that he's just been sitting at home kicking it. You can imagine, especially with the frustration that he experienced, that Kevin Holland is extremely ready. So I want you guys to make sure you tune in. It is, I believe, at 10 o'clock in the morning, as ridiculous as that sounds, this coming weekend. That ESPN Fight Night, it's going to be a free ESPN Fight Night, I believe, if you just have the ESPN Plus, and you'll be able to catch that Kevin Holland Vettori fight. And I think Kevin Holland is really going to be able to, I think this is actually going to be a main event for Kevin Holland. And it's going to be a great opportunity for you to see an up and coming fighter. And I think, honestly, everything is going to go full and well for Kevin Holland. The only thing that could get in his way is the fact that he's turning around within like 3 weeks to take another fight. But again, like I said, I actually don't think that's going to affect Kevin Holland too terribly much. I think it's actually going to be a problem for Vettori to not be able to game plan against such a stylistic fighter like Kevin Holland. I think this whole situation works out completely in Holland's favor, and I'm extremely excited to see this upcoming weekend's fight. I did actually just get notification a little bit ago, and I wanted to give a big shout out to Aspen Ladd. She tore her ACL a little bit back about a year ago, and she's going to be actually returning to action July 24th. So it's going to be really awesome. I love seeing athletes, especially in the fight game, return from those extremely serious injuries and come out and compete, because win or lose, it ends up being a victory for that athlete themselves, just to be able to perform at that level again, to be able to perform even better. Like, you look at what Adrian Peterson was able to do after his torn ACL. I mean, sometimes a torn ACL can completely alter somebody's career. It's just amazing to see people come back, and like I said, especially in the fight game, to be able to come back after like a torn ACL, after a serious injury like that could really affect your fighting career, and come back. So I'm extremely excited to see Aspen Ladd coming out here. Like I said, July 24th. Make sure you're checking that out. Now, we all have heard about it upcoming here this month in April. We got that Kamaru Usman Masvidal fight, and I'm fairly excited about this fight, because even though we've already got the Masvidal Kamaru Usman fight once before, you had the excuse that Masvidal took it on a short notice. So you're going to be able to see Masvidal take the fight camp, and both of them have the same amount of time to prepare for one another. The reason I'm slightly hesitant on this fight is because I like Marty Usman, but I like Marty Usman because he beat up Colby Covington. At the end of the day, he's not that interesting. He's like John Jones. He's a good fighter, but his fights sometimes can get boring. He can get into a good-ass fight, but you're just as likely to get a boring-ass Marty Usman fight. So you're also looking at Jorge Masvidal, as I think he's a very overhyped UFC fighter. Outside of the knockout that he got on Ben Askren in one strike, that one flying knee landed on Ben Askren, he was able to get that knockout. But since then, outside of knocking out Ben Askren, the most interesting thing that Jorge Masvidal has done in the UFC is beating up Leon Edwards backstage during an interview. He has not done shit in the UFC really since then. He barely beat Nate Diaz for the baddest motherfucker belt, or whatever fake ass belt, WWE style shit that they did with Nate Diaz and Jorge Masvidal. But since the nice strike that he got, that very quick strike that he got against Ben Askren, he's beat up Leon Edwards backstage in an uncontrolled environment. But other than that, has not really done shit in the UFC. So I'm excited to see what Masvidal really has. I'm excited to see if Kamaru Usman can come out here, because like I've told you before, Kamaru Usman is a couple of dominant wins like he's had here in previous memory. He's a couple of dominant wins from being one of the most, if not the most dominant and pound for pound best champion ever at his weight class. I think Kamaru Usman can seriously, as much as you hate to say it, because you can't deny his record, you can't deny his stats. So I mean, it's got a lot of potential. I really do think it does, but at the same time, you have just as much of an opportunity to catch a boring fight. So I'm excited to see the outcome of this Kamaru Usman Masvidal fight. But the fight that I'm honestly extremely more excited about, like anybody would be, is going to be the signing and the rumors of the McGregor Poirier 3 fight coming up. And I think this is an extremely fight, and if not one of the biggest fights in Conor McGregor's career, because I seriously think that Conor McGregor's legacy is full on the line here. Conor McGregor's career may full be on the line here. You're looking at what Conor McGregor has been able to do since the bus incident with Khabib, since going to boxing and taking on Floyd Mayweather. Conor McGregor has kind of had a serious fall from grace. And you're looking at Conor McGregor, I think, honestly, really needing a victory against Dustin Poirier here to secure the fact that he still is one of the most dominant fighters in that weight class, and he still deserves that respect. I think if Conor McGregor fucks around and loses this fight, like I said earlier, it's hard to wake up hungry when you're waking up in silk sheets. Conor McGregor has already, since fighting Floyd Mayweather, made so much money. He doesn't have that same hunger to fight anymore. He's not fighting for money anymore. I mean, at this point, he's fighting for reputation. And taking losses like he has in recent memory is only going to hurt his reputation and hurt who Conor McGregor is and hurt his legacy. So I think if Conor McGregor fucks around and loses this fight, he may end up retiring, and we may never see Conor McGregor in the UFC octagon ever again. He may try out boxing for a little bit, but I don't think if Conor McGregor loses this fight to Dustin Poirier that you actually see Conor McGregor take another step in the UFC octagon in a serious setting again. Now, speaking on boxing, I would like to point out one thing before I wrap up the show. So we got that ridiculous ass Ben Askren and the YouTuber fight. I can't stand that shit. You got that fight coming up. We have had notifications. Mike Tyson is getting ready to fight again. You're getting ready to see Manny Pacquiao step back in the ring. A lot of old boxing greats are stepping in the ring, and you're seeing a lot more of these celebrity fights. You saw me last week talking about Lamar Odom and the rapper Matt. I can't remember his name at the current moment, but the boxing match, the celebrity boxing match that we have set up against two certified coke heads, two certified coke smokers. It's getting to the point that you're looking at UFC has so completely eradicated boxing because boxing has just not been able to provide anything interesting in the last 10 years. Boxing, as great of a sport as it is, as great of a pastime as it is, the most interesting boxing events in recent memory, outside of Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder, outside of McGregor Mayweather, which you can also have to argue to say that was a really big money grab in its own right. So we'll take that out of there. Outside of Mayweather Pacquiao 5-6 years ago, we really have not gotten anything interesting from the world of boxing. The most interesting things that we're getting from boxing at the current moment are old boxers coming out of their prime to fight against each other. We're taking crackheads and putting them in the ring with boxing gloves on and having them fight against each other. We're taking 6'11" Lamar Odom and having him fight a 5'11" rapper over a crack rock. Like, we're having YouTubers fight UFC fighters that can't strike. It's like it's becoming a circus act, which is boxing. Boxing has become something that you can't even take serious anymore. Unfortunately, as much as we all love boxing, like I said, as great of a pastime boxing may have been completely eradicated in any serious setting due to the UFC and due to just recent non-competitive nature in boxing. And that's a terrible thing to say. But like I said, guys, we got a lot of stuff coming up next week. Make sure you stay tuned. As you see scrolling across the bottom of the screen, make sure you stay tuned on the Huddle Chat Sports Show Facebook, most importantly, and the Huddle Chat Sports Show Twitter. We're going to be making a lot of changes, including the time and potentially the day of the Huddle Chat Sports Show episodes. And we're going to be starting to get guests on the show as well. So if you would like to guest on the show, if you know somebody that would like to be a special guest on the show, send them my way, tag them in the video, shoot them to me in the DM. Comment on anything, let me know. And as always, like I said, let me know your favorite NFL team, and I'll discuss you guys next week when we talk about the NFL draft. We're going to be talking almost solely NFL draft when we discuss the NFL next week. So we're going to be talking about those top 5 non-quarterback prospects. And like I said, drop me in the comments and let me know your favorite team and what draft picks that I should be discussing next week here on the Huddle Chat Sports Show. We're also going to be discussing a lot of stuff about the Major League Baseball Association, the top 5 stories to follow in baseball this year if you may not be a baseball fan, and some serious changes that baseball may need to change to become an interesting sport again. We're going to be talking about basketball. We're coming towards the NBA finals, or the NBA playoffs. So we're going to be discussing James Wiseman versus Anthony Edwards, who is the rookie of the year. We're going to be discussing who the MVP of the season should be. We're going to be breaking down those end of the season awards and what the potential for those are going to be. All of that and more coming next week on the Huddle Chat Sports Show. And like I said, some real big changes and some really big upgrades coming on the Huddle Chat Sports Show. We're making a real big push to 420 followers. We're at almost 300. We're about 20 short from 300. So share this out to your friends. Let everybody know about the Huddle Chat Sports Show, because as soon as we get to 420 followers, I'm be giving away some Huddle Chat Sports Show merchandise, and it's going to be a big giveaway. Not just 1 or 2 pieces of T-shirts, not just a couple winners. We're going to have at least 15 people getting free Huddle Chat Sports Show T-shirts, hoodies, all of that coming you guys this way. So like I said, make sure you share it out. We're going to get up to that 420 followers mark and do a huge giveaway at that moment. But like I said, guys, that's going to be all of that for me today here on the Huddle Chat Sports episode 34. Thank you guys so much for rocking with me today. Thank you guys so much for being here today. Shouts out to Benjamin Hinkle. I agree, boxing is invisible. This celebrity stuff, an act of desperation or a hustle. I think it's a mixture of both. I think it's an act of desperation to make some sort of money. They're selling ass at this point. It's basically all that they're doing with boxing until they can get some unification fights. But like I said, guys, that is going to be it for your boy Indo, a.k.a. Dallas Clark here today, this week on the Huddle Chat Sports Show, episode 34. I hope your plants never stop growing and the sports never stop showing. I'm the fuck out of here. stay high, stay safe, and stay blazing. Much love, y'all, and I'm out.
Baby, please just pick up the phone. I know that you're home, I've been so alone. I've been lost in a room and the door been closed. Yo, I hope that it snows so I don't have to go out in the world that'll judge me. Lovely, trust me, I ain't looking for no one to fuck me. Love me, touch me, even though I'm ugly. I'm trying to put you on a pedestal up above me. I look in the mirror.
It's hard to deny the positive effect that cannabis has had on sports in the past and sports today as we know it. Cannabis is a part of sports whether you like it or not.
Often it pays to throw caution away. Man, I'm not gonna say that I'm living my best, cause my head, it resides
And
in
you're
the dark
getting
part of space.
high in the middle of the afternoon
Just call me
off
back, I
some
got time
weed.
today. We gon' fly away from all these problems. Lost in the moment, I don't feel like stopping. Hey, what I'm trying to say, you never know if you're gonna die today, cause you only live your life on this earth one time. I'ma get what's mine, I'ma find a way. Hey, hey. But hey, what I'm trying to say is call me back, I got time today. We gon' fly away from all these problems. Lost in the moment, I don't feel like stopping. Hey, what I'm trying to say, you never know if you're gonna die today, cause you only live your life on this earth one time. I'ma get what's mine, I'ma find a way.
Like a whole lot of weed.